branch officers and branch members who are doing the day-to-day work that sustains the party. Of course, there are many parties registered in this country. We know they have national officers. But because the branches don't exist, they virtually don't contribute so much to our political space beyond some of them being brushed up to attend IPAC meeting when it is so needed to push some policies that are so obnoxious, that are so bad. And that is why, for me, the branch position is one of the most celebrated positions. That is where membership is. Indeed, when we started the party in the early 90s, we used to have a structure even below the branch, which was a cell, and a minimum of 20 persons could put themselves together and be recognized as a cell. So smaller units were operating. You have cells, then before you get to the branch level. But along the line, based on developments, we thought that, okay, a branch should be coterminous with a polling station so that the leadership at that level will be answerable to a ballot box. That if this number of persons are so registered, you are responsible for them. Organize the party in such a way that it will be attractive to the persons who live in that area and who will potentially register to vote and therefore vote for the party to be able to implement its human-centered policies. So for me, that is the position that I cherish so much. And that is why I always salute my branch executives, because they are the ones that sometimes are toiling every day here and there. Sometimes you, the national officer, you appear at a function, the people have already been collected, and you go and speak to them. You enjoy the aura, you enjoy the atmosphere of a gathered group that you are speaking to, showing that you are engaging nationally. But there are some persons who lagged, who walked, beaten by snakes, scorpions, and what have you. They have to cross streams. These days that it is raining, sometimes you pass for a program. By the time you return, the stream,
tide is up.
The stream is so high. Yeah, the tide is so high that you may not even be able to cross. Maybe the wood you use in crossing has been taken away by the currents of the flowing water, and you are found wanting, either to go or to get back or to stay there till it subsides. They go through all this to collect themselves at one point for you as the officer to go and speak to them. For me, that is why I always celebrate them. So these 30 years is dedicated. These are comrades who on daily basis are doing all this. And that is why leadership keep calling on everybody to try and identify himself or herself with a branch. It is only when we do that that people will see the branch work as very important and the most important. But if we decide to do things superficially, that you think that, oh, I can stay in Accra and pick membership at headquarters. No. I have over the years tried to tell persons that we do not have anything like gold membership or platinum membership or I'm a silver. I've heard this again and again. The NDC have only one membership for all. What we do have, however, is a fundraising cards category that if you contribute a certain amount of money to the party monthly, then you are in this category in terms of your financial contribution to the party. That is not membership. And so I want to use this opportunity to clear that no one should call himself, I am a gold member, I am a platinum member, I am a silver member, I am bronze member, and so on and so forth. That is not membership. Membership is equal for all. That was why in 2017 again, after we tried the initial biometric membership, we thought that no, we needed to do certain things right and let our branch people have control over the membership of the party at that unit as the constitution dictates.
Okay, so I know that currently there's a membership drive in the party.
Sure.
So it means that anyone who wants to be a member has to go and register at a branch.
You have to go and register at a branch. That is what our constitution says. And that's why we are refocusing and making sure that apart from the general secretary who has to sign for your membership, the next person to do so is the branch chair. Because per our constitution, your membership is accepted at a branch meeting.
So those who come to party headquarters to do that, then who are they?
Well, it means your membership is fake.
Oh, how?
Because you have to be entered into the register of membership at a branch. So if somebody tells you that I can make you a member at maybe a regional party office or even a constituency party office or a national party office, that person is deceiving you. You have to identify yourself with a branch. Either, most importantly, we want you to do it where you vote. But for some persons, by nature of their work, maybe they live much more in a particular area, but they vote at home. Mm-hmm. You have some persons who may they live their life in Accra, but they are still so attached to their homes where they hail from or they come from, so they want to always go and register and vote at home, but they live most of the times in Accra. Such persons, yes, could be permitted to operate as members where they live and vote elsewhere. Otherwise, we want to encourage people to register as members of party where you vote. Okay.
Now, that drive is on, but it also raises the question about whether the NDC is really a party that is attractive to many, particularly young people, because there's always going to be regeneration of individuals in an institution. So I'm just wondering, does the NDC consider itself attractive enough, particularly to young people? And do they even subscribe to the party's ideology as social democrats? Otherwise, people just see the NDC as, oh, they're a strong election machine. They can deliver an election. If I do well, I'll get a position. I'll become powerful, influential, and wealthy.
You see, social democracy is seen more as an everyday thing, an everyday life thing. So many a times, people tend to see themselves as being social democrats. So when your ideology is social democracy, they tend to have difficulty seeing it in its real terms as it should be seen. But for property owning group, that becomes another level for persons. So it's so easy to identify with them and the few class situations and what have you. What we therefore need to do as a political party is to let people know that those things you consider as everyday things are the most important foundational things that you need. Because if you don't start from A, you cannot get to Z. And so once you aim at getting to Z, but you must learn to start from A so that you will be able to reach there.
But yesterday at the event, I'm raising this because yesterday at the event, I think Alhaji Hudu Yahya, who is your first general secretary for the party, he raised a potential risk about younger generations of people or members in the party who, if care is not taken, if they are not fully apprised of where the party came from, its ideologies and school of thought, no one will recognize the party in the future as social democrats.
I know what he's talking about and where he's coming from. And that's why I'm saying we need to work on it as leaders of this party to make sure that the younger ones, not just the younger ones, even new membership is well trained and well equipped to understand who we are and what we represent, despite the behavior of our opponents. sometimes, as social democrats, our first calling is to make sure there is some level of like egalitarian treatment of all. And that so therefore we focus so much on things that makes life better for everybody. Then you have another group that comes in. After you have done all these and laid the necessary foundation, another groups come and decide that, no, I am not going to worry so much about everybody. I am just going to pick some few persons and make them better. And in doing so, if you who consider lifting everybody, dealing with much of equality, don't speak out, your large base get discouraged sometimes by saying that, oh, I have been with you for this number of years. I have done this same work or even more. Someone who didn't do same have just been lifted and made better than me who have contributed significantly for the development of my party and country. So we therefore have a bigger responsibility and task to let people understand who we are. If you say you belong to the NDC and you subscribe to the social democratic ideals, this is the sacrifice that you will have to make. I like one demonstration that Dr. Haji used to. He displayed a very young person who, of course, by virtue of age, will not be so tall. Then another person who maybe middle age is a bit taller, and then a father who is very, very tall. There's a wall that is blocking them from viewing what is happening in the stadium. They have a platform to stand on. If you give all of them, the height of the platform is the same. You talk about treating all of them maybe equal. You give them a same platform of height like this, and they are to stand on it. That younger person will still suffer because the most elderly and the most tallest will see better, will see very well. The next person may just barely see. The third person will not see at all. So what you do in that situation as social democrat is to make sure you reduce the platform of the most elderly, the most tallest, and add that to the youngest or the shortest, and reduce slightly the platform of the next tallest and add to the youngest, so that all of them can now see what is happening in the stadium. That is what NDC represents. So if you don't explain this well to your membership and to your if care is not taken, and someone comes in and begin to do, like recently the audio we heard of the vice chairperson of Northern Region, who was the candidate for Sanerego, who was trying to indicate how they shared COVID money. So they just picked their members and individual and was just giving it like the way they share toffees at a marriage ceremony. If you have this situation, if care is not taken, your members now will begin to say, but we didn't get all these things done to us. So why are we in it? So I agree with Alhaji Hudu Yahya when he says we have a task to be able to explain to our members. When you have the understanding, then all of us can work for the successes to know that we can then sustain these successes over a longer period. So we don't have these cyclical things where we start and we are just about building. Then because people feel dissatisfied, then we get out. Then they come and destroy and dissipate everything. Then you come again and start building. When you are ready to do much more redistribution for the benefit of a larger group again, then you are kicked out and they come and continue the dissipation. So it is important, and I agree with him. We need to do that more. And we can only do so when all of us identify with a branch. If all of us leaders, those who understand it well, can identify with a branch and make it a habit that at least once in every month, I will visit a minimum of 2-3 branches and have a meeting with them, have an engagement with them. We must all take it upon ourselves. We cannot leave it for the flag bearer or the national chairman, or the parliamentary candidates, or the general secretary, or the communication officer, or even the national organizer alone. All of us, it's all hands on deck.
Okay, so knowing that it's all hands on deck, there are also questions about what the look ahead presents. I'll come to some other issues that have happened over the years, like those who left the party not once, but on multiple occasions. In terms of the look ahead, there's a certain perception that there's an era that is, currently ongoing, which relates to former President Mahama. I'm just wondering, how open is the party to alternative leadership, if there is alternative leadership, bearing in mind that former President Mahama has contested twice, not because people may not like him, but they are looking at, if, for instance, he were to win the 2024 elections, he cannot contest after that. It means the party has to find another group of leaders. So there's a question about why not open that space up potentially for a competitive process? Because what it looks like now is it's only former President Mahama that seems to be the main or the only front runner.
I'm happy you ended up by saying seems to be the main. In every situation, you will always have the main and you may have others. And that is why the NDC have always created space for everybody to participate. Indeed, we are the first party that had a situation of a sitting president who expressed interest in seeking re-election being contested. Are you not aware of that? We are the only party. In 92, we had President Rawlings, who was endorsed at Congress. 96, repeat. 2000, we had late President Mills, who was our vice president then, being endorsed in who as a candidate. Then 2002, there was a contest. Professor Bochwe and Professor Mills at a Central Cafeteria in Legon. In 2006 again, there was another contest. We had about 4 persons contesting. Edianam, Mr. Edianam was part, Alhaji Mama Idrisu, Dr. Ekospio Gabra, and Professor Mills. They contested for it. Then we went in and we won the 2008 elections. In 2011, the sitting president was seeking re-election. He was contested. So we have not joked when it comes to elections. Again, our flag bearer, we lost our flag bearer who was the sitting president so close to an election. The NDC didn't suffer. We succeeded in getting a candidate who won that election. So we are not lacking material. We are not saying that we are lacking material that can take over from anyone at any time. We have the men. When we truly say, and when I say men here, I'm not talking about men as in what we know. Both men and women find themselves in that. I'm just using it to represent.
So why is there a perception? And I know that the General Secretary issued a statement to in this regard, and also former Finance Minister Dr. Kwabena Dufo, who's been engaging on some initiatives. There's a perception that he's driving some initiatives potentially, and he doesn't have the full support of the national executives. This may be because he may want to contest former President Mahama.
You see, it is even dangerous to put initiatives as a basis for contest. Like I told you, there are many persons who are working their hearts out at the branches there who are not interested in contesting for anything. And the party is a registered party governed by a constitution. So, Jifa, you cannot just get up today and then you decide that, oh, because I have the wherewithal, I have the means, I am going to be doing ABCD across the country in the name of a party. You need to go through a process. And in going through that process, don't let any interest that you have cloud your mind in terms of seeing the leadership asking you to go through the right process as a stumbling block. Because if you dare allow that, and assuming you have so many persons who are interested, then it will create a chaotic situation for the party to manage. That is why we have rules. We have rules of engagement for everything that you have to do. There will be time when the opportunity will be opened, like it was opened in 2019. How many did we not have? About 6 persons contesting. We have Professor Joshua Alabi, we have my friends, Honorable Sylvester Mensah, we have Right Honorable Speaker Bagbin, then we have another gentleman by name Idrisu from Upper West. Then we have who again? Quite a number. And we have President Mahama himself also in there. At the end of the day, we saw the outcome. So you are right by saying there's a main. That is why some persons have suggested that where the main is still available, do we have to still go through some processes? Of course, constitutionally, we have to go through a certain process. Do we have to create unnecessary acrimony? Because contest by nature will bring acrimony. That is why right now you are talking about an initiative, an Ahuto initiative, which should have been so good. And
then there was also the advertising for the membership drive, which I know was being driven by Dufour's team.
Which should have, that is why I'm saying, which should have been so good if it was done without possibly lacing it with intention to contest. It would have helped the party so much. But possibly because of the intention that I want to contest, anytime leadership is offering leadership to guide the process, it is seen as a stumbling block. But it is never a stumbling block.
But former President Mahama also undertakes activities.
Of course,
he undertakes
activities in the name of the party. For example, if Dr. Dufour, because you've mentioned his name, decides that there's a party activity happening, I've been invited, and he's been invited on many occasions to do many sightings. Not too long ago, he organized a public lecture that sought to push a certain agenda, and I thought that agenda was pushing social democratic agenda, which is good. I don't think the party complained about that. But when you want to interface with the party structure, it has to go through a due process. It has to go through a process that is accepted by the party. That is different from maybe there are funeral activities that is happening in the regions. You are invited or you get yourself involved. Fine.
So we can you confidently say that the party executives in undertaking their duties are not doing so in a biased manner?
I don't think so. The truth of the matter is that, like you said, there is a main. You would always see the main before maybe you see others. Like right now, if you ask me to look at your studio here and look at which color stands out, I may be pointing red. I see that one first, possibly before I begin to see other colors. So there's the main before you begin to see the other ones around. So the main will always be seen. Look, if all of us put together in the NDC are to appear anywhere, John Dramani Mahama will be recognized by even the blind who can't see. His voice will be recognized by them. His voice will be recognized. And so you must live to us, you must accept that and live with it.
All right.
That his entry to a function will be received differently from how you will be received. Don't forget, he's been of course, a parliamentarian, he's been a vice president, he's been a president before. He's been our flag bearer, at least on the ticket, in 3 elections, 2012, 2016, and 2020. He's campaigned virtually in every constituency, not once, maybe more than twice in some of the constituencies. So his presence, his participation, his acceptability is so high. His knowledge of issues that confront us today is so high.
Okay, I'll come back to you on a few more issues, but we now have Dr. Samuel Edujemfi, who is a senior lecturer at the KNUST's Department of Political Science and History. Let's get his thoughts on what the look ahead may look like for the NDC. Good day, Dr. Edujemfi, and thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning to my senior who sits with you now.
So the NDC is celebrating 30 years. For you, what does that present? Good, bad, mixed views of how they've performed?
It is difficult to use excellent for political parties because of the nature of the activities and the challenges that they face as a group. That notwithstanding, I would say that it's a great thing to hear and to know that the NDC is 30 years. Very significant in our history, because it is not only the NDC as a political party, which I will come to, but also the individual actors who came to form the political party and those who subsist to push its agenda are all part of the history which encapsulates both the good, the bad, and the ugly. The next, if you like, the past 30 years or so of our life. It is essential for us to appreciate that the NDC as a political party is indeed a public entity. It does not only belong to few masses. The constitutional arrangement that allows party formation, party grouping, is not only for it to win political power, but it must also be broad-based, not ethnic-based, religious-based, among other things. And it's been demonstrable. It's shown, the NDC has shown that it's one of the, if you like, the foremost, if you like, masses party as against some traditions that seem to be elitist. Having said that, it's also a political party with its social democratic tendencies or ideology would have the privilege or the opportunity to be able to bring about development within the space of an emerging economy or developing economy. In that, in any developing economy, you wouldn't want to say that the state actors, and for that matter, the citizens, would have to grapple with everything themselves, so that the state, in a way, plays a certain pivotal role. The state becomes the fulcrum around which everything revolves. Then individual actors are able to emerge as a result of the support the state gives. In that respect, it's able to deal with the question of inequities, social displacements, try to bridge gap between the very rich, which in some jurisdictions or in some countries you would find, where very few are very rich and the very masses are poor because of lack of social cohesion and support for the individual masses who really form the state or the polis. Having said that, here we are. I think that the future can never be bleak. The future can be great for the NDC. One, I say so because it has won political power before, it has formed government before, and it has also been in opposition before. As we speak, it is in opposition. Political parties are not only formed to win political power to form government. When they are also in opposition, they serve as pressure group. And the NDC has been able to do that vehemently within its 30 years history or period as we talk about them. So that when it is in power or when it's gone into election, it's demonstrated that it has capacity to win elections and has won elections before and formed government. And when it has even lost elections, it has demonstrated that it has capacity to serve as a minority voice that is able to bring government into check and allow for the state machinery to run according to the desires and largely according to the desires and expectations of the masses, because they act as a good opposition when they are in opposition or when they are not in power. In that respect, I would say that you can only say that the future of the NDC is great, it's going to do well because it's going to win elections again, possibly in the foreseeable future. And they have strong electoral machine like their counterpart, the MPP has. The second level or the third level, which I've almost discussed, is the fact that historically, since the Fourth Republic, we've had power alternating between the NDC and the NPP. There is no doubt that they are not an emerging force, they are an existing force. And in that respect, Ghana, for that matter, would want to wish the NDC well and would want to hope that internally they'll be able to put in strong, better, if you like, resilient mechanisms that would be able to crystallize into production of excellent leadership, build strong institutional support therein, with the ideological schools. I've tagged on this on different platforms from time to time. They say that our political parties should know that the leaders that emerge from the state or from the citizens. If the political parties, and in this respect, the NDC, is not deliberate in grooming leaders for this state, what would happen eventually is that when we have weaker leaders, it will not only truncate the process of growth as a country, but it will slow our pace, our capacity to be fast driven with some, leadership that has great sagacity, leadership that has wit and smartness and is able to bring home the public good as governance is required to do. And so we want to believe that in the coming years, the NDC will not only be strong and formidable, but it will have the capacity to even give us leadership that are, better than what we have seen in the past. Leadership that is better, that will be better than what we see now. Because as a living organism,
Dr. Edu Gyamfi, let me just come in and piggyback a bit on what you talk about leadership. You've indicated that, political parties, they look at, the environment and they work towards what they want in terms of whether it's the electoral victory, whether they're in opposition. The NDC, many predict, see the next elections as a make or break for them, partly because the new patriotic party currently in government is seeking to break this 8-year convention. What are your thoughts about the abilities of the NDC to do that? Because there seems to be a view of potentially who may emerge as the flag bearer, and that's former President Mahama, in spite of the potential contest from Dr. Dufour we are seeing and anybody else who may be interested.
Respectfully, if I may, when it's the 8th year, it is always a make or break for the party that is in opposition, because historically, the NDC and the MPP, they've alternated power. Power has oscillated or vacillated between the NDC and the MPP by the 8th year. And so it is quite significant that the 8-year election period, right? The 8-year election period doesn't look like a marathon, but it's like a sprint or a heat, because it seems to me that the forces that be within Ghana's electoral system, including even the press, which is the fourth estate of the realm, begins to see a change in the atmosphere, that power will surely alternate. It is this sense of maybe existing quandary or dilemma for the political parties that the MPP seeks to break, that the 8th year, come what may, whether you even turn a male into a female or a female into a male, power will alternate. It is this that the MPP wants to break. It is also would be the very reason why it would, if you like, aggravate potential schisms, dilemmas, quandaries, tensions, challenges that would, possibly before the election, not only because the NDC did so well in the past elections, but it is also because it is the 8th year, somebody dares to want to break it. But the 8th year will sometimes lead to runoffs. The 8th year will sometimes lead to many things. And the political parties themselves understand that. And when one is in opposition, it is time for that opposition party to want to strike whilst the iron is hot. And in this regard, the incumbent would want to say that I wouldn't want power to be easily wrested from my hands. I must do my best and put in my A game. And so the 8th year is always a critical year because of the nature of it. I have said also on different platforms leading up to this discussion that one, it is not bad at all to market, or better say, we are not even talking about how marketable the former President John Dramani Mahama, His Excellency, is. But what I'm trying to say is that it is not bad at all to rather present a general who has the kind of dexterity, the kind of acumen, the kind of know-how to be able to lead, to go to war and possibly bring victory. He's won before, he served in government before, he understands the terrain and he understands the politics. It will not be easy, right, to want to, on an 8-year, balance the scale or be on an even keel with the kind of candidate the MPP will present. It would rather be better the NDC as an opposition would have a candidate who has a competitive edge or comparative advantage. And that would vehemently be found in the person of John Dramani Mahama without any equivocation. Having said that, I believe that should not disrupt the internal democratic arrangement of the NDC itself. It must allow such processes to suffice. And having said that, when they're able to, reconcile their ranks and touch base with their, electorates, then they'll be able to push in and deliver home the goods.
Dr. Edu-Gyamfi, let me just read one or two messages which I think are interesting and get your thoughts on it. Then I'll come back to Kofi Adams and you'll hold on a bit more. There's a message here from Richard from Zebila. He says, the NDC is not aggressive about implementing social policies. The NHIS is an example. Former President Rawlings started by piloting it, but President Kufuor implemented it nationally. That's one. The other message is that some of the student politicians also put in too much effort, whether it's TAIN or TESCON. And so they see politics as the quickest way to riches. They can skip classes or exams just to attend political activities. And that's from Alasan. So let's start off first with the social policies. I've heard members of the New Patriotic Party officials say that the NDC doesn't have a strong track record in implementing social policies. They point to the National Health Insurance. They point to the LEAP, the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty. They point to the school feeding program, the capitation grant, the various allowances that are provided to the lowest in our society, or the, below the poverty line people in our society. What are your thoughts about that? Because I've also heard people say the NDC say they are social democrats, but they like to embark on huge projects. So they build a lot of roads, and then we hear a lot of criticism that we can't eat roads, usually when the NDC is in office. Or they invest in huge infrastructure projects in education, in health. And yet at the end of the day, many people say that their situation is no better.
This is a very important question, and maybe we would want to tackle it from respective angles, but quickly, not to sound like I am campaigning for the NDC. I would also want to say that I need to be fair as a historian, as an observer of the events of our country, to say that in Africa, one of the countries with highest rural electrification is Ghana. And if you don't see rural electrification as a major social democratic tendency, and even if the NDC itself does not know, then nobody should sing that praises for them. Right? You should understand that I know that the political parties have rallied themselves around their manifestos, and for that matter, for example, get
Okay, unfortunately, we've lost Dr. Edu-Gyamfi. We'll try and get him back. But I'll just throw the same question to Honorable MP for Buemo, Honorable Adams. They say NDC, it's all about big projects. Okay, I think Dr. Edu-Gyamfi is back. So let's let him finish his point, then I'll come to you on that. Yes, Dr. Edu-Gyamfi.
Right, so
sorry, we lost
sorry
you.
About that. Yeah, sorry about that too. So there are other, the NPP would focus on free education, NHIS and all that. And historically, we understand that the whole NHIS agenda started from elsewhere. Governance is a continuum, right? And we go through continuity and change. The NDC itself has made several interventions with respect to the so-called huge projects you talk about. Which country that is an emerging economy? Remember, in the 1960s, we began to have emerging economies as a result of, in Asia and Africa, as a result of new burden independent states, right? Which included Ghana, which was then the Gold Coast. One of the major things you look at is infrastructural development, apart from tying that into industrialization and all that. Infrastructural development is necessary because if you don't do that, then you cannot allow for the preconditions for takeoff to occur. Because if you are citing even rural industries for that matter, or if the country was and continues to be largely agrarian, and look at the galloping kind of inflation we have over the period. If the farmer would farm and we don't have good roads, right, that will bring home the goods, how are the people going to have it? If you cite industries and you have bad roads, how are the people going to have access to the semi-finished products or finished products that they produce, right? Man hours that are wasted on in the traffic and all the other inconvenience that we suffer within the state. So you need expansion, you need infrastructure in the sense of road, and road are very critical in terms of access, in terms of beautification, and even in terms of development. You need subventions from state into areas like agriculture, into areas like even electrification, support for rural electrification and all the other related indicators. You need, yes, government support in the area of education, and not necessarily free education per se as the MPP does, but also you need to look at it also from the angle of infrastructure and creating space for enhancing existing schools, giving them more facilities for them to be able to go into STEM education, or expand capacity to build rural schools for individuals in the hinterlands to have access to those schools, for them to also break the social gap or inequity as a result of a lack of opportunities in terms of education and access. Not only free, because free does not mean access, and that is a very critical question. So maybe and most people have not also looked at the recent manifesto the NDC produced, right? If that manifesto had won, victory for the NDC, I believe that it had a lot of spotlight in there. Maybe Honorable Kofi Adams would be able to speak to that. But largely, I had opportunity because of where I sit to study that manifesto, among other manifestos this country has had. And it's one of the phenomenal or fantastic manifestos that would have, maybe if the NDC had come to power and they were and duty called and they were really interested in building the state, would have done some great deal out of that. And so as a party, even though the MPP seemed to have stolen the show with a certain kind of mantra with the free SHS, the NHIS and all that, the reality of the matter is that rural electrification, for example, in itself has the capacity or the space to displace even these two, because in Africa, you cannot imagine. Maybe someone will say travel and see. In terms of electrification, Ghana has done that far as a result of the NDC, and that in itself cannot be overlooked.
All right. Dr. Edwidge, if I'll come back to you briefly, just hold that thought about the question on the students and them skipping classes to pursue political activities. So, Honorable Adams, the issue of infrastructure, you want us to drive from, I think one of the great memories I had from 1996 when I was doing my national service was driving on a very bumpy but busy road that is from the Tetekwashi interchange all the way to the National Theatre, because it was under construction in that era. So you want us to drive on these roads and see these big projects, drive over Circle interchange and say, yes, NDC did Circle Dubai. You want us to see these big hospitals you've built in each region. But people say that at the end of the day, they don't feel it in their pockets. And you say you are social democrats.
Jifa, I lost my dad, unfortunately so, because of traffic congestion that led to Kolebu Teaching Hospital. So you can imagine the number of lives that has been saved by clearing that traffic through that construction. Lives of ordinary persons that have been saved.
So you dispute the view that the NDC engages in prestige projects?
No, I'm even coming to deal with that. What is definition of prestige? And to NHIS, what is insurance, Difa? Insurance is me paying something today when I have a little means, paying little by little, so that tomorrow when I need the service related to that, it will be rendered me. Where do we render health service? Is it not at health facilities? So if you don't build the facility and you take money, contribution from people to render them that service, And when they need it and it's not available, have you done social intervention? So, infrastructure is key to every social service. You cannot give education if you don't build the infrastructure. You cannot give healthcare if you don't build the infrastructure. You are in the media. When we're building the University of Ghana medical facility and we lost power, the government came and they decided not to even commission that project. At a point, the health minister said it didn't have standby generator. It took you, the media, to expose the number of standby generators that were there. When COVID came, he himself was taken there, and he was not even telling the truth. He said he was resting. If we had not built that, maybe our health minister would not be alive today. Infrastructure is key. You don't collect money from people in the name of insurance when you have not provided the infrastructure. So first, you must work at that. That is why the NDC, and I don't know why, whether we deliberately have decided to keep quiet over the evening news publication in 1997, where Dr. Kwame Adokufo, he was the ranking member for health. He made it very clear that government should not focus on national health insurance scheme. They should allow the private systems to operate. That was the position of the ranking for health. When MPP was in opposition and we were working at the piloting schemes to introduce a national health insurance. But almost all of you, including, we say it, the media, you don't want to pick it, dig in, and come out with your own independent report on that. For people to see the position of, at least, if not the whole of MPP, what is ranking on health said. Luckily, Dr. Kwame Adokufo is still alive. If I'm not speaking the truth, I'm sure somebody is watching that may link up to him. Whether in 1997, when he was ranking for health, what was his comment on national health insurance?
But today we have private people in the space.
I'm saying
so
that
at the end of the day, it vindicates him.
I'm saying that, yes,
because
yes,
that space has become...
But then you don't now come back and say that the party that was in power, that was working to a project, that you critique them, that they didn't do it because you finally did it in 2003. You don't come and say this. Because it was because there was an agenda. And this was after a lot of infrastructure has been laid.
Okay, so I concede.
The NDC now realized that we have laid enough infrastructure, regional hospitals almost existing in every region, district facilities, clinics and the rest have been upgraded and so on and so forth. And between 81 and even 92, the number of health facilities that we have added exceeded what had existed from colonial era till 81, when the PNDC even intervened.
So then the NDC continued. You've built hospitals, then the NDC, you've built schools, you've done rural electrification, you've built roads, flyovers, and the like. But at the end of the day, if people cannot also afford the facilities, then what is the point?
You may have been lucky that you lived most of your life possibly in Accra here. So you did not have the opportunity of enjoying a village life, where you have only one lantern in the house. You pick it as a kid, studying, trying to do your homework. Your mother wants to go and pick something in the room. She'll come and take it. She brings it back. In the next moment, your father says he's looking for his something, and then he can't find it. You come and take it. Immediately, they bring it back. They come and take it. And sometimes, this is bobo. It's not even the lantern that is well covered. The bobo one with the smoke, you inhaling the smoke as if you are a cigarette smoker. You go through all this. And a government decides that let me extend electricity to such a community so that you now put a bulb on and every room will have light. Your dad or your mom, when she's going into her room, will not come and remove the bulb over your head that I'm taking it in so you can study. Improving academic performance. You say this is not social intervention. No, I'm not saying you.
Okay.
Those who are saying so, I'm not saying you.
Okay.
This was the situation. National Grid did not go beyond Kumasi. It didn't. They were, till date, we still have communities that you have not been reached yet. So it can tell you the effort that. So when you don't see this as social intervention, when you don't see a situation of extending electricity to a community where it costs you more, then you have to have a generator. You have to buy fuel to fuel it before you will get power. Now government work to extend power to such a place. So all you need, if you have your fridge, you can cook and store your food. The carpenters could now work day and night because they have light. They are not restricted to only working during daytime. The carpenter who needed to travel long distance to go and plane his wood with a machine before coming to work in the village now can do it in that small village. Opening up and booming industry, small cottage industries because of extension of power. We say we don't see this as social intervention. When you build schools so that teachers don't become weather forecasters. I attended school in a village where in the morning the teacher will look to the east and look to the west and tell you the clouds are gathering, so go back home, no school. Because if you stay and it starts drizzling, directly you will feel the impact. You build good schools so that teachers no longer become weather forecasters, declaring their own holidays at various places. And kids can stay in school. We don't see this as social intervention.
All right.
You build roads like the Dr. Samuel Edu Jemfi said. You build roads so that food can move from the landlocked areas into centers of needs so that the cost may not be that much. The farmer will also benefit. We don't see that as social intervention. Then I don't know what is actually social intervention. Social intervention is not distributing bits and pieces. Today, school feeding that you talked about, that came into being under President Kufuor, that the Dutch government supported all through. By the time the NDC came in, that support has been withdrawn, ostensibly because of acts of also the way and manner they manage the whole.
But that
fund.
Was a long time ago.
I'm saying, yes,
Adams.
yes.
That was a very long time
let
ago.
me finish my point. Then you tell me whether it is long or yesterday. The NDC comes in and makes sure that that policy is sustained with local funding, government of Ghana funding, not Dutch government funding. Today, what is the situation? Are you not seeing the women on the street demonstrating that they are not paying them? The government that claims that they introduced that policy cannot sustain it. At the time, you have increased our debt from 120 billion to 409 billion. You can't pay the school feeding caterers. Your own party people, they are on the street demonstrating that mu pese NDC for best. You want NDC people to laugh at us. They can pay them. So what is this about? I introduce a policy that even you cannot sustain. The NDC that you claim didn't introduce school feeding, sustained it for 8 years. Paid school feeding caterers. Less than 7 years. They are in their 6th year now. They can't pay school feeding.
All right, let me put a pause on that. Let me just read some messages and then we take a break and then we'll come back. This one says, good morning, Jifa. The NDC is far better than the MPP when it comes to governance. That's from Alaji Haruna from Ashaiman. This one says, I really appreciate the recognition of the NDC branches by your guests. And there's no name, but thank you very much. This one says, I'm enjoying the show. NDC should forget about coming to power. We, the NPP, are going to break the 8, inshallah. And that is Abdul Fattah from the northern region. Boateng writes, the NDC has ruled this country more than any other party. And I think that if Ghana is suffering today, then the NDC also needs to take a bit of the blame, because to whom much is given, much is expected. This one from Mash Taylor says, good morning to you and your panelist, Jifa. Please, those who are saying the NDC has not introduced any social program should answer this. If a rich person gets sick, do they go and they go outside for treatment? If the poor get sick, where do they go? So clearly, hospitals are very, very important social intervention. And that's from Mash Taylor. This one from David Adu writes, the health insurance scheme started as a mutual health insurance scheme piloted by the Catholic Church in Nkranza prior to it being replicated by the administration of former President Kufuor. The NDC metamorphosed the scheme on a wider basis, that is transforming the scheme from a national health insurance scheme and increasing the number of beneficiaries who could access it. That's from David Adu Tema West. And thank you very much for your messages. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll come back to Dr. Edu Jemfi and to Honorable Kofi Adams. Thank you for staying with us here on The Key Points. I'm Jifa Bampo. My guests so far, the Honorable MP for Buem, Kofi Adams, and then Dr. Samuel Edu Jemfi, who is a senior lecturer at the Department of History and Political Science at KNUST. Let me turn to you, Dr. Edu Jemfi. So there was a question there about the young student politicians skipping school to just become political activists, to participate in political activity, and missing classes. And for a lot of them, they see this as a quick path to wealth, influence, success. What are your thoughts about that? Should the parties manage that a bit better?
Yes, the parties need to manage these activities much better than the way we see them today. But I would say that several of the leaders we see today have interest in politics. And I mean, every part of our society deals with politics, decision making at home. It's about politics. I mean, the political economy of the bread and butter situation, the father as the head, the mother as the neck, the children as the base of the society at home. There's politics in there. So politics, right? We are all, if you like, political and social people, right, or persons. And in that respect, you cannot say that for many of our actors at the national level only came to that impromptu. No, several of them developed such interest even from their homes, and then leveraged at the, junior high schools, even in primary schools, junior high schools, through to secondary schools and to the university, where it can crystallize into many things. So largely, the politics and interest in politics does not only develop at a tertiary level. However, at the tertiary level, you see that historically, and when I refer to the tradition of the NDC, right, when the PNDC came to the fore, right, with its social, drive, and what even led to the question of the coup, for that matter, the President by 1981, was a question around corruption and the need to stem it and to, if you like, intervene the cause of the people. Several, individuals, like myself, who have talked about the development truncation of Africa, have touched on coup d'etats and how it served as inflection point in the history of Africa. Having said that, when leaders like the former President Rawlings came to the fore within that period, what really brought about legitimation was as a result of the fact that, one, the masses themselves were interested in the fact that there should not be an elitist class. There should be a society that is developing on even keel, and individuals benefiting from that society that was devoid of corruption, or that was largely unencumbered by corruption, which can serve as a putrefying soil that can decay the economy of the state. And you recall that the structural adjustment policy and all that, and the challenges that came about in the 1980s with our bush burning and other issues. The former President Rawlings is credited as one of the individuals, and for that matter, Ghana is credited as one of the countries that did so well in its attempts, right, to come out of the doldrums or the challenges with structural, with the policy of cash and carry that will come about as a result of structural adjustment, the questions around privatization and all the other questions that were indices that were projected on us by the institution. The country did so well within these days of challenges in the 1980s. But what was so significant, which emerged in the 1980s, if I can recall from history, is the question around devolution of power and decentralization. This did not really emerge from the CDRs, as some would rather say that the district councils displaced the CDRs, but rather we know that the Ahoys, the NDC, right, were the major philosophical proponents of this theory of devolution, decentralization, and all that. And today, if we want to talk about development, it takes us back to the question of decentralization. And within the 1960s up to 70s and all that, the emerging burden politicians and intellectuals within this school that will frame the NDC, right, in the 1990s, will be those individuals from Achimota that found themselves in Legon and elsewhere that had the opportunity to rally themselves together, individuals who were intellectuals in their own right, even though the leader of the party then was not a graduate from a university. Interestingly, someone, my colleague, Dr. Aguzamati Boateng, some time ago said that, in our conversation, both private and public, said that we need to bequeath the entire Fourth Republic to Ajudi and Mbemdini General because of his dexterity and ability to quickly switch into that democratization or democratic transition in the Fourth Republic, and that you can largely bequeath the Fourth Republic to also the NDC as a party for not trying to do what the Mugabes and the other leaders and actors who emerged in the 1960s in Africa ended up torpedoing or crashing the destinies of their own countries and economy. So in the 1970s, 80s, these leaders would emerge, would be from the universities. And remember, historically, the politics have always been in the university. They have called for social change. They called for social, positive social disruptions. All came from the university. It was because they were rather reading various theories, right? Either Marxism, Leninist construction, or different theoretical constructs that disrupted the existing, if you like, political culture, which would be against the other property-owning democratic orientations and all that. These individual actors will come wearing their, what those days they call the abongo shoe and all that. So it was a kind of philosophical rallying point at the university. It was a question around epistemology, a question around ideology, a question around philosophy, how the state must be developed. And so those who came to form government were those who were crème de la crème, if you like, for a better one, the right way. Better people who had better stuff, who had read, who had engaged the literature and debated themselves at different levels at the tertiary level. Today, we have come to monocracy. The highest bidder wants to win, and the main actors on the stage are really not teaching the young ones the right way. And I will blame the patrons of, if you like, of these units in the universities. Because in my thinking, I believe, for better or right, in my intellectual persuasion, I believe that they should spend days and times arguing on ideological fronts, debate themselves as Stein and Tesco, have time to come to the table with policy debates, as was the case the individuals who were interested in let me learn on that, sorry about that. But unfortunately, what we are seeing today is that, when people want to change the color, the complexion of the politics at the local level, yes, they want to use student funds, but unfortunately, they wouldn't want to engage them from an intellectual point of view. And there, they corrupt them and sometimes end up corrupting them absolutely. And then they bring it up to the national level. Right.
Finally, Dr. Edu Gyamfi, in the post-2000 or just before the 2000 era, we saw the NDC have some people break away from it. So you saw the formation of the Reform Party, and then much later we saw Dr. Obeda Samoa's party also formed post-2004, 2008, thereabouts. There's a question about the sustainability of the NDC. I know you said they have the potential for strong leadership going into the future, but is there a risk of breakaway factions, for instance, looking at the internal contest that may emerge? Will they still remain one entity, unified, or there's still a risk of people breaking away?
It is important, just to even add to the question that if you want to test a system, you would want to find out how it's been able to consolidate itself. And the NDC has been able to consolidate itself as a result of its ability not to give as a result of these groups that would break away. Because internally, these breakaway groups were testing the internal democracy of the party, which they found wanting initially. They were ideologically framing new things and felt that those actors therein should have been given the opportunity to lead. And such misgivings themselves also lead to the emergence of new forces, either within the party or they end up breaking away. It is with all civilized and advanced jurisdiction. But what is important for us to appreciate is that today, in our Fourth Republic, the Fourth Republic has bequeathed to us NDC and NPP. It will be very difficult in my contemplation to assume that any external force can strike the NDC and get it to break its front in terms of its ability to hold itself together. Rather, what I think the NDC should be interested in is to begin to strengthen its broad-based nature. And I say this politely, for better want of a right word to choose. I do not mean to create cause any unnecessary stir, but I believe that the NDC should open up to the country, especially to Asante, in a special way. I have said since 2012, specifically and consistently till now, that if the NDC begins to build capacity in Asante, I use Asante to refer to the region, and I use Asante to also refer to the people, and to the people specifically who will be referred to as Asante or Asante 4. It is essential because, remember this, if you look at the country broadly, it is more NDC than NPP. And I've said it openly from time to time. The only missing link is that they've not gotten the Asante factor well. One, they should not be suspicious of Asante, so that in the region, they should begin to have Asante for emerging as leaders in the region. They should begin to be interested to allow Asante 4 to have major stay in the party. When the party is able to evolve around these areas, it's a difficult subject. Some people don't want to talk about it, but I believe that the NDC does not belong to only my senior Honorable Kofi Adams and the others. It also belongs to us. And we want to see the future of that party to become great. And so, if they are able to do that, I can tell you with no equivocation, it will be difficult for MPP to win elections in this country.
Okay, don't go. It's an interesting point you raised. Let me let Honorable Adams quickly respond to that. So there's something about the party being mass. Yes, you, in the last election, won in 8 regions, but you still didn't win the overall elections. And Dr. Edu Jemfi is pointing to a key constituency that could potentially keep getting you across the line if that is what the party needs.
Well, in terms of advising us a strategy that a little bit more attention be paid there is fine. But I reject the proposition that we are suspicious of.
He said, don't be suspicious. He didn't say you are.
In other words, maybe That is the thinking that we are, so we shouldn't be. We have had key Ashanti persons occupy very key and prominent positions, both in party and in government in the past. And you can talk about, mention like the Dr. Dufours, the Kojo Bonsus, the Kwame Wadakos, the Dr. Punis, the Alex Moles, the Betty Moles, and so many uncountable, Professor Otina Jays, in very key ministries. Ambassador Ohinia Jekum, and so on and so forth, as ambassador, as chair of Cocoa Board. He was Samuel Sapon. You keep mentioning. Ambassador Ohinia Jekum has been a party chairman before. Yao Bimpe has been a party chairman, youth organizer. Abeye has been organizer. And if you look at the structuring of the party, key Ashantis have played roles.
So of course, why are you not getting as many of the votes?
So that is where we have to now look at. So it is not the suspicion of them or not allowing space for them to play a role in NDC. That is the issue. Because that space have been provided. If you go way down for the registration of the party, if you look at some of the party constituency executives and the regional executives, they still are playing key roles. We need to possibly now go beyond and begin to look at some of the earlier ideological things that we spoke on and whether people can understand. I've heard some business person who says, my business does well when NDC is in power, except that the NDC don't support me directly. It may be true, but it may not be true. That we may not call you and give you money as somebody else will do. But because we are supporting the generality of the country, we are increasing your purchasing base, your consumers are being increased. So whatever you do, you will get people who will be able to consume that product, people who need your services. So you see that your turnover will be higher because NDC is investing every resource that comes into his hands when it is in government in the people. So the people's purchasing power increases. But somebody else comes in, calls you an individual and gives you the money. So you go into that business. You are rendering service that people who are supposed to benefit from your service cannot afford that service. So you see that their businesses go down. So gradually, people who are interested in doing business, and I know most of our Ashanti comrades and brothers and from Kwewu and the rest love to do business. So people who are inclined to should begin to now see that this is why when NDC is in power, we do well. We invest in generality. We give you the opportunity that you can even take facilities, and whatever you are producing, there will be more persons to consume it. Let's reach out beyond some of these officers to those who want to move from the lower to middle or from middle to the upper level to know that NDC is their home. If truly they want sustained development, they want their businesses to grow and grow so well, NDC is their home. That is where they should be putting their votes. And so, yes, at that level, I agree with him that we need to do more. And we need to have captains and seniors from that region also to push that agenda. For example, again, I'll mention because they are the ones. If Dr. Dufour, for example, decides that I'm taking an Ashanti project, that I'm going to make NDC in Ashanti region attractive to the young persons by explaining to them what we do, because I've been a governor of Bank of Ghana and I've been a minister of finance and I'm a business person myself and I know what NDC did in all these periods that I was, and I will take it up as a project to explain to these persons. We will be increasing our strength there. If the likes of Kwame, Alex, and the rest would also go down, Auntie Betty, as she has always been doing, they will all increase it and begin to engage with these younger persons. And then you get an addition from the national at the top. then the message can really sink well with these other young persons who grow up and think that we have been born into. And so therefore, whether it is or it is not, that is the way.
Okay. Final comment from you, Dr. Edu Jemfi. And your final words, please.
I believe that the NDC will do very well, even in the coming elections, if they are able to strengthen their base and increase their turnout in Ashanti region. I also believe that when they deliberately decide to groom leaders, that will not only take after those who become former leaders, but also bring in more, if you like, expertise. Then the kind of leadership they would offer this country in the foreseeable future will be greater than what we have seen. I wish them well, and I hope that as a masses party, they will live to that cause and be able to fulfill their calling within the space called Ghana. And I believe that history and posterity will be kind to them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edu Jemfi. He's a senior lecturer at the Department of History and Political Science at KNUST. We also are joined now by former Minister Dr. Benjamin Kumbwa. We'll bring that interview to you shortly, because it's also good to get a view from an older member of the party about what they see the look ahead is and what the suggestions are for them to address. Are you afraid that people will break away from your party anytime soon? Because in recent times, there have been some individuals who have criticized the party. They've been put before disciplinary committee. They've not showed up. They've been suspended and the like.
Well, like I said earlier, the party is a registered political party that has a constitution. And so if the party at any stage feels that one has done something, they will put you through some processes. You may not have done it, maybe you did it, and you will suffer the appropriate punishment. I seated here have been put on suspension before, even as a deputy general secretary, on things are denied. Subsequently, they went in all through to the logical end and found no evidence against that. I came back stronger, even though I was stopped from contesting as a member of parliament for Buim then in 2013. I subsequently in 2014 became national organizer of the party because I subjected myself to all the processes. At the point I even challenged the party for not hurrying in terms of their dealings with me in court. And I became campaign coordinator even later. And now I'm a member of parliament. So disciplinary process are processes that we all approved in our constitution, and that will be used on any and every member. This party have actually also suspended its national officers before. Our General Secretary, Late Josiah Aye, was one time also suspended. So this is not the first time that if you do something or the party feels you have done something, that is taking action or inviting you to appear before it to take action and you don't. But we are not afraid. We wish that everybody will be under the umbrella. That is why we are a Congress. Because we know we have come from different shades of opinion to get together to do what it is that we are doing. We agree that we will not only do some one thin line. No, that is not who we are. We disagree at meetings until we have accepted the position that this is what we are taking out. And that is what will continue to be. If anybody at any time feels that he is so uncomfortable with that and therefore cannot stay in, like President Rawlings once said, it's a train that is moving. It will stop somewhere for more people to join. When people are joining, there may be opportunities for some to also exit. That does not mean that the train will terminate. But our wish is that all passengers will remain on board till we get to our destination. That is seeing Ghana totally developed.
I like the analogy.
I would wish that, for example, Her Excellency Nana Konadu Agyeman Rawlings will retrace the routes and get back to her home.
Will she be accepted if she were to make that decision?
We accepted Dr. Beda Samoa, our former chairman and the rest, who equally made very strong statements against us in 2008. We won that election. We accepted them back. Some persons from the DFP got appointed for ministerial positions and what have you. So this will not be the first time.
Okay,
and she contributed significantly to the establishment of the party and the sustenance of the party. So whatever the difference were or are, I don't think that they are beyond her analysis and understanding and to come back, especially when your first daughter is proudly representing the party in a very significant and important constituencies like Korle Klottey.
Okay, let's take Dr. Benjamin Kumbo, who joins us. Good morning to you, Dr. Kumbo, and many thanks for making some time for us here on TV3 and 3FM's Key Points. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been quite a while. How are you doing? What have you been up to?
Hello?
Yes, if you can hear me, I'm asking, how are you doing? It's been quite a while. How have you been coping?
Yes. I'm actually at a place where there's so much background noise, so I've moved away. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly. Loud and clear, sir.
Yeah, okay.
So the NDC is commemorating its 30th anniversary. Are you happy with the party you belong to and had the privilege to serve as Minister of State in various capacities and also as a Member of Parliament?
Hello?
If we can fix, we'll shortly fix that line with Dr. Kumbo very well. Hello, Dr. Kumbo. Can you hear us now?
Yes.
That's better?
Yes.
Okay. So I was asking, are you happy with your party currently, the NDC?
Oh, why? Why should I not be happy with my party? It's a relatively young party, but its record also shows for itself. So that should be a party that every member of the party should be happy with.
Now, in terms of this commemoration of the 30th anniversary, many people are looking at what the party was, what it's been doing, and what the future looks like. Currently, the parliamentary setup is near split, and the NDC minority in the House have been trying to put up a strong fight on various issues. What for you is the look ahead for the party, knowing what we have right now?
Definitely, the party has a lot of good future. If you watch the brief history of 30 years of the party, you can see the level of resilience. In African countries, mostly, it's difficult for a party to be in power for some time, lose elections, and bounce back in 8 years. And the NDC has proved very clearly, particularly in 2008, that it's sufficiently resilient to be able to stand the tides of all the political challenges that do come up from time to time.
In terms of how they look at issues, for instance, I know the NDC minority had been very strong on opposing the e-levy. They've raised lots of concerns about payments into the statutory funds, that is NHIS, Get Fund, and the like. They've raised concerns about the state of the economy. Do you get a sense that the NDC are sometimes held up, or the NDC is sometimes held up to a much higher standard, expected to be championing some of these issues, even though it's an opposition party currently?
Well, basically, you see, the NDC has a lot of experience, having been in government a number of times and having been out of government a number of times. And we all know in any serious democracy, the opposition always has a very, very clear position to take. People try to make the comparison in terms of the debates between the majority and the minority from a number of inappropriate assumptions. Because we are different political parties and our economic policies sometimes differ in terms of detail of implementation, we would always be indicating that, for instance, if you introduce a tax, our debate on that tax would be that perhaps it would not be a tax that is relevant, or that tax could be structured in a particular way. Those are the alternatives that the NDC side in Parliament is articulating. And I think that is its mandate, which it is performing quite well.
Now, in terms of the party, it's released this electoral calendar. There's already a hot race in the governing NPP. The NDC has released this calendar. Luckily, you are in opposition, and so it gives the party flexibility about how it wants to go about things. However, there's a potential view that the NDC seems to be looking to just one candidate and may not be creating space or opportunities for others. Do you take this view that it's only John Mahama who will most likely become the flag bearer for the 2024 elections?
Well, I think that everybody in a democracy is entitled to his view. As to whether that view is right or wrong is another matter. People interpret political processes differently. So I guess that some of the people who are expressing that view are expressing it from their perspective and not necessarily because it's reflected in the facts on the ground. You see, people need to look at John Mahama's candidature in a completely different context. He's been a vice president before. He's been a president before. Currently, he's a former president. So his stature looks different from all other entrants who might be coming. And particularly the media would definitely be more interested in him because they have interacted with him. And that is what seems to show the prominence that he's playing. But I'm not sure, as a matter of policy for the NDC in any way prevents any other person in a democratic, competitive election from coming up and expressing what they bring to the table. So let's not be looking at what individuals are thinking. They're entitled to their own opinion. But the facts are out there for everybody to have a closer look at.
Now, Honorable Kofi Adams is the MP for Buem. He's with me in the studio. I asked him about unity in the party and knowing how some of these contests can potentially be rancorous. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on unity in the party?
Definitely. Anybody who understands the workings of a political party would certainly not allow one event in the party calendar to create rancor. Definitely, they say when a stool is vacant, almost all the prince and princesses will be contested. But once you have crossed that road, everybody is expected to come back to make sure that the party is strong. Yeah, so these basic agitations and different viewpoints would be expressed from time to time. But I believe that the NDC again has that capacity to go through challenging elections and then be able to regroup in the shortest possible time to prosecute the agenda that is more fundamental than the internal struggles for positions and things like that.
Can the NDC prevent the NPP from breaking the 8 in 2024?
For doing what?
Can the NDC prevent the NPP from breaking the 8-year governance convention? You know, each party has had 8 years to govern at different points in time. The NPP wants to extend that by winning the 2024 elections. Will the NPP stop them will the NDC stop them in their tracks?
Of course, a number of very strange political buzzwords normally come up in our political debate. When I started hearing about this break the 8, I wondered what exactly it meant. And the idea is basically that almost every government has gone through a cycle of 8 years and that the NPP intend to break it. Well, that is their wish. And nobody can take their wish from them. But if anybody was to ask me about breaking things, I'll tell you that what needs to be broken in Ghana is let's break the undemocratic practices that we are carrying on. Let's break those rules that flout the Constitution so openly. Let's try and make sure that we want a breakthrough in which government is service. These are, for me, the issues that we should be breaking after having practiced our 1992 Constitution and multi-party democracy for a number of years. As for breaking the eight in terms of an election cycle and who comes into power, it's neither here nor there. The voters of Ghana are the only one who will decide whether an aid can be broken or not. I think they should also be looking at the possibility that from the trends I have been reading, a time will come that no political party might even reach the aid for it to be broken. And if you see the 2020 elections, you see clearly that the 8-year thing was almost truncated because the electorate really don't have the luxury to allow any party to come into power with very lofty promises and only come in and start raising issues that were not the issues on which the people voted for them. So yes, let people dream about breaking the aid, but there are more fundamental things to break in our democracy than an election cycle.
Thank you very much, Dr. Benjamin Kombo, for speaking with us this morning on the key points. Let me just read the last batch of messages and I'll give Honorable Adams the final point and prepare to move on to the next segment. This one from Kwesi Asemani says, congratulations to the NDC on their 30th anniversary. This one from Mike Simon in Adenta. It says, as for me, I live in Adenta, and in terms of resolving the Dumsor problems and the expansion of water supply to cater for specifically Adenta, those are more significant under the Kufuor administration. This one from Everlove Kwashi says the NDC has great economic development achievement, which have been chalked by former President Mahama and Rawlings, as well as the zeal exhibited in their administration. They enlightened many of us into becoming social democrats through their policies such as education and health, subsidized for all, construction of quality secondary schools across the country. This one from Captain Yagakpo. I don't think that the former finance minister, Dr. Dufour, can win the candidacy of the NDC. He should rather invest in supporting the party that he loves. This one has no name. It says, Jifa, the NDC has done more for the Ashanti region than the NPP, at least in this Fourth Republic. The Ashanti factor against the NDC seems to me to be they feel they don't belong. The NPP, the Ashantis see the NPP as their own party, and that's why they support it. James from Pando writes, Honorable Adams should add the rural water expansion projects that have been done. I remember as a child how I used to wake up at 2:30 a.m. to go to the river to fetch water, but now at least there's water where I come from. That's from James from Pando. This one has no name. It says, Jifa, I'm always blaming our communications team for not explaining the realities of the implemented social development programs to Ghanaians, because the NPP only implemented a mutual health insurance. It was during Professor Mills's time that it was made more national and expanded. In the beginning, you could not use a health insurance in Yendi at the Tamale Hospital. Now you go to Kolebu, Komfanoche, Yendi, you can use the same card, but the service isn't great. Thank you all for your messages. Much, much appreciated. And thank you for bearing with us for some time on this. We needed to speak to Dr. Kombo before we could move on to the next segment. I'll take a final word from Honorable Adams. The question is the NDC acting like a government in waiting? Some do not think so. Many feel that the current economic challenges seemed to be a passé for you, and that if it had been the other way round, we would have seen people demonstrating, people on the streets, people agitating, but the NDC is in opposition. It's like business as usual. Are you a proper government in waiting?
Well, Jifa, you've asked a question that many have asked, and the answer has been difficult coming directly. Whether if we were, this is what would have been happening. It's more like measuring a religious leader, a priest, and someone who has registered himself up for a project. I don't want to use a particular example, but maybe that is what can give you a clear distinguishing situation for you. Like, say, someone who is a prostitute and then a religious person. The expectation, the moral measure that is put on the priest will be higher than the one who already registered himself or herself up as, this is what I am doing. What the people of this country have failed to do is to appreciate the NDC from the point of view of the many things that we do. We do them without real communication that is true. Because if I wake up this morning before coming here and I make sure food is provided for my kids or people who are under my care in the house, should I come and sit on TV3 and talk about it? No. I see it as my responsibility as a father. That is how NDC sees things. It does. We have thought in the past that by doing all these good things to the people, it will translate into support. But we have come to realize that sometimes even our opponents use only billboards to tell a story of things that will never be done. They have made more noise and talked about planting for food and jobs than even the number of jobs and food that they have planted. Meanwhile, you've had an NDC administration that have done more in that sector, including provision of fertilizer for free, which was later to be sold by this government to them. And when they couldn't even buy, it remained there and went waste. This is the situation we find ourselves. So I want to call upon everybody. We should not be interested in just wanting to lead, maybe as flag bearer, maybe as chairman, maybe as general secretary, maybe as national organizer. We should be interested in speaking to the smaller groups and explaining things for them at this stage. That is what we need. Anytime we are in government, this country is always better off. That is why we create so many funds. Look at NDC administration. Knowing that we have found oil, and that the oil we have found, we cannot spend every peso 100%. You need to save some. You need to put something in a sinking fund. You need to put something in heritage fund for the use of future. We never knew that the future was going to be just yesterday. The future that we were thinking of then, a few years ago, we didn't know that it was going to even be yesterday. When COVID came, where did government make money from? It was out of those funds that we created. Now you have another government that comes in and says that, oh no, we are not even interested in creating funds that in case of emergency we will use, but rather even the bauxite, the gold and everything that is underground that we haven't even assessed yet, let's go and even sell it ahead of time. Let's go and take money and come and spend today, so that tomorrow, even when somebody comes prospecting and taking it away, the generation yet to come will not get anything from. How on earth can we allow such a government to continue and to say that we want to break it?
Okay, we have to end.
What kind of aid? Break it to continue this situation? We need to cure this country. We need a real person to come and cure. And I agree with the person who sent the health insurance
I
issue
think
that it was a mutual thing. That's true. There were many other interventions that even President Kufuor initiated that were enhanced because that's our belief.
Okay.
Look, the Metro Mass buses, we came and equipped them with new buses.
Unfortunately, now it's not working.
Right hand,
but we have to.
Of course, they have come and they have collapsed it again.
We have to wrap up on this and go to the next segment.
So, yes, I wish every member of the NDC well. We are 30 years. It's hooray. We've been good. We've done so well. Let's pat ourselves for what we have done and let's work so hard to win the 2024 elections and be able to implement our great policies.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kofi Adams. And we'll be moving on to our next segment shortly. Let's just take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll take a look at what's been happening in Parliament this week. Parliament is planning to take a look into the EC following allegations that there were additional ballots for the 2020 elections. Then there was also the criticism of the chairman of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee over delays in processes to pass the LGBTQ bill. We'll come back after this break. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, let's deal with this second segment, which deals with happenings in Parliament this week. And one of the things that we've learned is that the special committee is to be set up to look into the Electoral Commission, how it handled the 2020 elections, particularly with reference to allegations of additional ballots. Now, former President Mahama had made this claim previously, and the Electoral Commission's leadership had called on the police to investigate that matter. We haven't heard anything out of that, but it would be interesting to find out what this committee will be seeking to probe, particularly because this was an issue that would have been dealt with at the election petition, and we all know the outcome of that. So what's Parliament looking for? We'll find out. Also, this week, the chairman of Parliament's Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee had come under some heat this week. It's because of perceived delays over the passing of the Promotion of Proper Human, Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill. It's known colloquially as the Anti-LGBTQ Bill. And the Honorable Sam George and the Honorable Dapia Makwo, who are one of the backers of that private member's bill, had raised concern about it. So joining us in the studio today is the chairman of that committee, the Honorable Enyimedu. You're welcome, Honorable Enyimedu. Thank you for making some time for us. We're still staying with the Honorable Kofi Adams. So I'll start off first with the issue of the bill. I know that this was raised on the floor of the House, and you tried to give some explanation about processes. Tell Ghanaians why this hasn't been done much faster.
Thank you very much. Every bill goes through stages. When a bill is introduced, for lack of time, I may not be able to.
Oh, you can make your excerpts, no problem.
There is a first reading. After the first reading, it is referred to a committee. In this case, Parliamentary, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, of which I chair. Then the committee will deliberate on this. So we are at the first stage. After that, we submit a report to the plenary, to the speaker. Then there is the second reading of the bill, where the principles about the bill are considered. After which, if it passes through the second stage, there is a consideration stage where we have to go through the bill one after the other. Our standing rules talk about it in order 129, I suppose. Then when we have finished with that, then we go to the third reading. When the bill was referred to us, we met as a committee. The Committee of Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs consists of 18 members. 9 MPP members, 9 NDC members. We actually use the ratio of the representations of the parties in Parliament. And now you know that it is 137, 137 with one independent candidate. So it is equal. On the NDC side, the person that is the ranking member, that is Honorable Ehiafo. Then I chair the committee on the side of the MPP. As a chairman of the committee, I do not dictate. What I have to do is to do consultation. Even calling a meeting, I have to confer with my ranking member. And when we agree, we actually discuss it with the other members of the committee. And if it is affirmed, we hold the committee. When it was referred to us, we held a meeting. And the timetable and the plan was that the nature of this bill, particularly, is a very sensational bill. And therefore, we have to seek some knowledge from the public. So we advertised in accordance with most of the bills that we go through. And the public sent a lot of memoranda to us. We received about 186 memoranda. So the plan was that we would have to group them and meet them. We held 8 different meetings and for public hearings. Now, when we are doing public hearing, the cameras, we showed it to the whole of the world. The cameras will have to come and we have to pay for that. And we spent not less than 130,000 per sitting of the, which, and
that's the cost of the publication
yes,
and the organization.
Yes, that's on the average. Sometimes when we meet, we spend about 140,000 or 145,000. And all this would have to go into the public accounts. You see, the chairman of the parliamentary service is the speaker. So if we want any money, I have to write to the speaker, and then the speaker will give the go-ahead. I must say that the speaker had never declined anything, but we have a budget for every committee, and now we have almost run out of budget. About 2 days ago, I wrote to the speaker asking for additional budgetary support because we have used almost the money we have on public hearings. Then after the public hearing, what we had planned was that the committee will retire in camera. There are some groupings that wouldn't want to appear on the cameras, so we would have to hear them privately. The first of the series of meetings we held that we have started was done on the 2nd of June. And
2021.
2021. That is last week, Thursday. And I had a sponsor of the bill, in the person of Honorable Bejra, who is not a member of the committee, but sat in that meeting.
Oh, so this meeting happened just over last week?
Just 2nd of June.
It's 2022.
2nd of June.
Sorry.
Then 2 days after, he comes to Parliament. He was the person that raised the whole of this issue. He comes to Parliament to say that he doesn't know what the committee is doing about this bill. And I found this as something that is hypocritical. Because on the 2nd of June, you sat in our meeting. And then you are blowing hot and cold. So the next day, I drew the attention of leadership. And Honorable Bejra at the moment is at ECOWAS Parliament. So I drew the attention of leadership that if Honorable Bejra were to be around, I would have asked him to withdraw what he had told the House and apologize, because he is aware of what we are doing. At all the meetings that we have held, including the public hearings, the sponsors of the bill are with us in order that the public would understand what we are doing. They pose questions and they actually expatiate on the points they want to. As of now, we have not started the clause-by-clause consideration by the committee. Now, that is about what we have to do. So for a member of the sponsoring team to turn around to say that he doesn't know what we are doing, that is absurd.
So what about this point made? I heard the Honorable Sam George and the Honorable Dapia Makbo make that there are guidances for delays, and that according to the rules of the House, within 3 months you have to deal with these issues. If you don't, you have to inform the Speaker and ask for an extension.
If any person says it, I'll forgive the person, but not somebody who claims to be a lawyer. Honorable Dapia Makbo must listen and listen well. Article 106(14) says, and if I have the permission, I'll read. A bill introduced in Parliament by or on behalf of the President shall not be delayed for more than 3 months in any committee of Parliament. This is repeated in our standing orders. Now, it says a bill introduced on behalf of the President. They are losing sight of which makes it public bill. The bill that we are considering is a private member's bill. So to say that we have to work as if it is a public bill, I can't understand this.
But knowing fully well the significant public interest in this bill, wouldn't it then be more prudent to ensure that the issue is fast-tracked? Because this is a matter that has not just gained attention in Ghana, but globally as well, sir.
We have other bills we are dealing with. On the 29th of this month, we have scheduled another meeting, and it is not on this anti-LGBTQ bill. So the plan was that, you see, because we can't just rush through this bill. That one, and that's why we threw it to the public, for the public to give us an input. If it had been, there are rules. We could actually go, some bills come, and it's taken through the stages, the 3 or 4 stages, the same day to come out, especially financial bills and tax bills and whatnot. And then there are other bills that could also go under certificate of emergency. But this is a private member's bill. The public should not lose sight of the fact that quite recently, I think in the last meeting or last 2 meetings, Article 108 was an issue, and the Speaker ruled that, for lack of time, I may not go there. The Speaker ruled that that is about the fact that private members' bill should, if you want to do a private members' bill, other interpretation is that it must not actually have any effect on the consolidated fund. But we have gone past that stage because there were other arguments. My ranking member said that even if we have to print a paper from Parliament, that is on the consolidated fund. So we have gone past that. Probably this is the reason why private members' bill were not popular in the previous parliament. Even in the 7th parliament, it was started by Honorable Michael Quay, but it was not as prevalent as we have it now, which is good for the country. Because there are other bills on capital punishment, death, penalty. These are all bills that are before there. There are other things on citizenship, and then also on the OSP that the committee is considering all these. We have held other meetings on this. After the 2nd of June, we've held a meeting on other committees. So for somebody to say that there is, by law, by the Constitution, and by our standing orders, we have to actually work within 3 months. That is neither here nor there. I can forgive Honorable Muntaka when he interprets this to mean that we should finish this law within 3 months, but not somebody who claims to be a lawyer. You must actually use your words very well because you are guided by the Constitution. So, Jifa, we have actually worked on this bill. Sometimes we sit for about 186 memoranda. We sit in the morning, we close at night. And we have done 8 sittings. All our money had gone into that, and now we are asking for additional budgetary support to actually proceed with this. So I heard them say that during the recess of 7 weeks, I didn't call a meeting. Who is sponsoring this bill? And if members are in their constituency and I call them to come for a meeting, who is going to pay for their fuel? I mean, they know all these things because Honorable Daffy Amopo is a member of the committee and also a sponsor. So I expect better from him.
Okay, so sorry if I'm holding you just a little. I'll come to Honorable Adams. The final bit on this for the moment is that maybe the concern about the timing has emerged partly because of the what was the erection of billboards purportedly promoting LGBTQ activities, which has now been pulled down. So I think the concern also is that if we don't get ahead of this, we'll be seeing all sorts of clandestine promotions of this act that people, majority of Ghanaians abhor.
I am a Ghanaian. I am a Christian. My background is that I'm a Presbyterian. This billboard that day, I saw it on the news. Even if I had gone past the billboard, I don't know the meaning of the billboard. But I sound a caution. The LGBT community must be very careful because this bill came about when they attempted to open an office within Accra, and then there was a public outcry. So everybody is interested in this particular bill. Already we have a law. Our criminal code shans upon this. The criminal code says that unnatural carnal knowledge is an offense. So already part of what is before us and what we are considering, the law shans upon it. It is criminal for any person to engage in any unnatural carnal knowledge. But the sponsors of the bill in the memorandum also states that there are other things that are involved in these LGBTQ activities. I am not an LGBT practitioner. And therefore, we need to actually listen to the public. There are some, and if I don't remember anything at all, I remember the Catholic bishops attending to our meeting with the greater respect. There was a question posed about what is their advice for us. They said that God loves every person, including the LGBTQ practitioner. But God hates the act of that. So they leave it to us as parliamentarians to actually make a decision. The Presbyterian Church came, Honorable Efuamonin and his group came. There are others also that came to talk about HIV prevalence, how it had risen, others contradicting and whatnot. So members of the committee, we have all this knowledge. And when we sit down clause by clause, on the 2nd of June, the meeting that we held was proposed and organized by the Parliamentarians for Global Action, of which some of the members of Parliament in Ghana, including me, are members. And they didn't want it to appear on the cameras. There are other groupings, so I have to just liaise with the Secretariat. What other groupings do we have? After that, we sit down and consider the clause by clause. What I can promise Ghana and the world is that the clause, as had been presented to us, the bill as presented to us would not come out the same way. It, like you send a bread to be baked. When it's going in, it's white. When it comes out, it's black, brown. So obviously there will be changes and additions, but we will get there. But you cannot say that you are rushing us through because the rules say so. I know how Ghanaians are interested in this bill, and I am interested as well. I am very much interested in this bill. Everybody is interested in this bill. But for somebody to say that, look, it is being delayed unnecessarily, I cannot get it.
Okay.
That is not true. If that person is not being mischievous, I do not understand, because being a member of parliament, being a member of the committee, to go on air and even going to the extent of saying that they think that I have been compromised, it's too bad.
I'll come back to, I didn't want to raise that yet. I was going to raise it. Yeah. But let me come to Honorable Adam. So certainly there's a huge public interest in the bill. There's a lot of work that Honorable Enyimedu has indicated, but he points to an important thing, the imposition on the consolidated fund. And it's not even in reference to how much is being spent. Now they've even run out of budget to run this. What's your sense about, the House pulling together to do this in the right way, as he has outlined?
Well, it's very clear that the House is prepared, no matter the cost, to see this bill through.
You are prepared no matter the cost, yet other bills have sat in the House for decades.
Well, we are discussing this particular one here now. When it comes to those other ones, we will discuss and see why possibly it has taken some time, because some bills ultimately will have economic effect, will have even the structuring. But if you look at this bill and you look at what is being proposed, I'm sure at the end of the day, we may not even need to create any other structure. Like in the case of the right to information bill that spent so much time, we needed to create other structures that will be caused to see to its implementation and who to apply to. This one is just about creating a law that will enhance the already existing institutions to be able to perform better in those areas. That's all. It will not demand creating something new, for which reason we will be suffering all this delay. There seems to be, this is the first time a bill has been introduced, that there's some high-level consensus outside there, whether it is religious, the various persuasions, Islamic, Christian, and traditional, have all spoken in favor of the bill. I'm yet to hear anyone in these religious sects that we have, Christian, traditional, Islamic, and any other, saying that they are opposed to this bill. Indeed, health experts, majority have spoken in favor of this bill.
But why would your colleagues make the committee look like it's unwilling to address this?
I'll come to that. I'll come to the committee's unwillingness. You see, they are raising that because of the initial posture of even the committee itself as to how it wants to approach its work. After they receive the various memoranda from the public, I wanted to attend one of their sittings, but I couldn't. I'm not a friend to their committee, but what is happening now, since the chairman is here, I'll tell him I want to be a friend to their committee and then I'll attend as a friend.
To the committee.
So, there was that debate as to, based on the memoranda that they have received, some of it could just be classed like the way the Supreme Court had the election petition cases, putting some of the issues together. So you didn't have to meet them individually.
No, that's what we did. We grouped them.
That would have reduced that they expected further grouping beyond what is being done. Then they will invite the group leaders to come into the meeting room. Then you just consider clause by clause. So you go to the first clause, where the disagreement is, those who are proposing it will speak, those who are opposed to it will speak. Then you know that you have concluded. What they are trying to do is that let's hear them based on their memos that they have brought. Then after that, we now start at the committee level to consider clause by clause. And so this is seen by even some members of the committee who are also sponsors and who are not members of the committee and are sponsors, or other MPs feel that this process will let the bill take too much time and that it is possible to do it this way. Bring all of them. Why will anyone be opposing a bill or supporting a bill like this and say that, oh, I don't want the public to know that I am
well, everyone is well within their rights. We can't take that away from them.
So that person should not subject the workings of the committee to. You can present a memo, and the committee have a way of communicating with you. If you don't want to appear in person, the committee.
No, they want to appear in camera, and that is an option.
And I'm saying that if you don't want to appear in public, and the committee's hearing is in public, and the committee say we will communicate with you, they will have a way of hearing them.
But there's no rule that says that we should not give people who don't want to be in public opportunity.
That should not delay the workings of the committee.
But the question is, the committee also has to do right by all manner of persons.
And that introduction from some members of the committee, like I said, I'm not a member of the committee. I'm not a member of that committee. I'm not a sponsor of the bill. But I have also heard that this introduction of some persons wanting to be heard in private and not in public is a new thing to them. And that these persons were not part of the earlier memos that came to the committee.
That's speculation. That's not true.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not there. But this is what we are being told. When he got a chance to speak on the floor of the House, where we were all present in the chamber and plenary, he did not respond to some of these issues. So I still will consider what has been raised out there, since it's not been spoken to for me.
He will address that.
I'm saying he had a chance.
But I'm just saying to you,
he had a chance
that as a committee, and he's a lawyer. I'm
saying they
have to do right by all manner of persons.
Beside the committee,
thank you, lawyer.
Beside the committee's working, he had a chance to speak on the floor of the House when he thought that issues were being raised. And I'm saying he did not speak to this particular matter that I have raised. Now he's saying it's not true. I don't know how I can independently verify, because I'm not a member of the committee. But I believe that he will be speaking.
Okay, so hold on. So there's a perception that the committee is delaying this. Honorable Nyimedu will answer.
It is not perception.
Oh,
it is even
he has explained the process.
For example, he talked about budget.
That's one issue.
He himself also added that Mr. Speaker has not declined any budgetary support for this.
But you were also in the House when Mr. Speaker.
But you allow me to finish so that you can ask your question, because the interjections is becoming just too many.
I'm sorry.
I'm not even able to finish a point.
But I'm just saying that Mr. Speaker talked about budget challenges.
The fact that Mr. Speaker talked about budget challenge to Parliament does not mean that a particular committee would not be able to work. Yes, there is lack of releases to Parliament, and the recent one we had is our arrears for 2021. That is true. But like he himself said, even though we've not received anything for this year, the committees have been working. He says they have almost exhausted their budgetary allocation. They haven't exhausted.
On this bill?
On the bill, yes. On this bill. And I'm saying that if you look at the importance we all attach to it, including even Mr. Speaker himself, I believe that any request that goes to make them work to get this bill through will not be rejected. It will not be rejected by Mr. Speaker, and therefore they can carry on and work. So far, if Mr. Chairman, the chairman of the committee, writes requesting for additional support or variation for them to spend other funds for other bills on this, and then Mr. Speaker say no, then they have a reason. But we haven't reached there. Again, this is also a bill, like I've said earlier, that when I read the bill, its passage is really not going to put any burden, financial burden, on the state.
Passage or implementation, sir?
I mean, when it is passed and it gets to the point of implementation, it's not going to put any financial burden.
I disagree.
Well, they may, but it may not
because some may go to prison. And if they go to prison, who feeds them?
If you go
some
to prison,
they want health support.
If you go to prison, it is because you have committed an act that would have been considered as criminal. But if you don't, I'm talking about if you don't, in terms of creating institutions to be monitoring, like I said with the RTI.
Right.
The RTI, you have to establish institutions to make it work. Even in this case, if you go and commit the act and you are arrested, the normal prosecutorial processes is what you will go through. You don't need to go and create any special institution, any special committee to be watching and to be looking for that. If you don't do anything, you will not go to prison. And the state will not spend anything on you. So I think that we are appealing to the committee chair to find ways together with his ranking and others to at least hasten and let this meeting hear something from them.
Okay.
We want this meeting before we go. We want this meeting to hear something from the
pressure.
committee. We want to hear something from the
so
committee.
Honorable Anyimedu, there were accusations that you'd been compromised and that people wanting to see you in private means that there's something fishy. Or should I borrow your emblem and say there's an elephant hiding somewhere?
Right.
Have you been compromised?
Never.
Is this a potential for you to be compromised?
I would have asked Honorable Adams whether me as a person or as a chairman. You know where I'm coming from. I was at the office. Some ladies and gentlemen called to speak to me. I didn't know where they were coming from. They came to the office. I admitted them in. And there were many. In my office,
Money or many?
Money.
Okay, because I heard money.
Our office, that's what your people are thinking. So all the chairs were filled in my office. So they numbered about 12 or so. Then I asked them, and then one of them introduced himself as the LGBTQ community. He said, okay, hold on. My ranking member was then the Deputy Minister of Finance, the MP for Ejiso. So I called the senior member of the committee who was immediately available, Honorable Amir Treme, to come and sit with me.
Your ranking?
Yes. No, he's not my.
No, you said your ranking was a former.
My vice.
Because
my vice chair.
Your vice chair.
Is the
Deputy Finance Minister.
Deputy Finance
Honorable
Minister.
John Kuma.
John Kuma. So he was not available. And so I called the senior member of the committee, and then we deliberated. Then they said that they, amongst other things, that's what they have presented a petition to the committee as well. But the crux of that was that they didn't want to be seen in public.
Because they are afraid of.
They said people are lynching others because they suspect them to be part of the LGBT community. So they lynch them, they put them naked, whatever. Nobody should forget, lose sight of the fact that this is a parliamentary select committee on constitutional, legal, and parliamentary affairs committee. Per Article 12, 14, blah, blah, on the fundamental human rights. We have taken, we are Christians, we are Muslims,
no,
we are
you have
whatever.
Not answered whether their previous petition indicated they wanted a public or a private
when they bring their petition, nobody states whether he wants to be to speak to the public on camera or in private. Nobody indicates that. But we invited them to actually give public hearing. And they said that we have invited them, but they don't want to appear in public because people will go after them. If I cite Article 12, for instance, which is talking about the fundamental human rights, is that the fundamental human rights and freedoms enshrined in this chapter shall be respected and upheld by the executive, legislature, and judiciary. 2, I didn't finish with that, but it said every person in Ghana, whatever his race, place of origin, political opinion, color, religion, creed, or gender, shall be entitled to the fundamental human rights and freedoms of individual contained in this chapter, but subject to the respect for the rights and freedom of others and for the public interest.
Exactly.
So we have taken the trouble to have sworn with this constitution to protect the constitution and all manner of people. I agree that larger community, including priests, I belong to a sect, Presbyterian Church. My other pastors and whatnot have spoken to me and whatnot. But I have sworn with the Constitution. Even if the people involved in this is 0.0001% of the population, we have a responsibility to listen to them. And it is their right to actually to be heard. at the end of the day, they would not dictate to us. Amongst that, so when somebody says, I've been meeting them in private, it is never true. This is the only meeting. It was one meeting where they indicated. If we call them and they said that they are not ready to come and speak to that, we start the clause by clause.
But Chairman, is that the procedure? If people want to, is that the way they have to come and see you in your
on
your
the
office,
2nd of June,
or they write officially and they say
they've written already. They've written already to the committee.
Are they supposed to come and meet you in your office privately?
How do I determine who comes and who doesn't come to my office? Somebody comes to my office and he says, I want to speak to you. What's the issue about? He says, it's on this. I said, I can't listen to you alone. Let me call a senior member of the committee to sit with me. After that, I report to my ranking member, this happens. And then accusations are going on. What do you expect me to do?
So on hindsight,
but Honorable Adams, just like you are an MP,
what?
Anybody who comes to job 600 wants to speak to any member of parliament, unless the person declines to meet them, there is nothing stopping anyone.
If somebody comes to me,
why do you suspect something with the visit?
On a matter that, no, I'm not suspecting, I'm trying to help you. If somebody comes to me on a matter that has been referred to my committee, that comes to my office, you have written, and I know that this is not the procedure. Knowing the nature of the bill that we are considering, I'm sure on hindsight, when you see it, you would have thought that maybe it would have been better to have engaged them in a different forum other than just the way you did it, especially when you did not get,
even though this accusation, because what I'm saying
I'm not
is
accusing
that,
you.
Listen,
I'm
when
not
they were
accusing
coming,
you.
I didn't know why they were coming.
But
when they came, I got to know that.
But he brought in a witness.
Immediately you got to know, you should have asked them that, considering your agenda and what you have, we will have to fix another day for me to get leadership of the committee.
That's where we are heading towards. No, to actually have the whole committee. And the meetings outside the camera, we've held the first one, which was on 2nd of June. That was with the Parliamentarians for Global Action. Eminent men like some professors and others were at this meeting, but they said that they don't want the meeting to be on camera. So it is not like you have assured them or you have concluded already. We haven't had any meeting. And I said that we are inviting them. We'll invite them. I've discussed with the ranking member. If they are ready to actually meet the committee in camera, we'll do that. After which, and you'll be surprised. The nature of this bill, we were invited by the parliamentarians in the Netherlands. When we put it generally, that it was human rights issues and all those. Members of the committee, when we went, the main agenda was on this bill. The House of Commons in the UK had written to the Speaker that they would want to meet 4 members of this committee on human rights. They mentioned capital death penalty, and then on LGBTQ. And we are supposed to go to the UK.
When?
We are supposed to travel on Sunday and walk into the meeting Monday morning up to Wednesday or Thursday. We finish and then we come back. I'm going with my ranking member and 2 other members of the committee, all on this.
Have they given you a view of what they'll be asking you, the House of Commons?
I am interested to go to the House of Commons because this bill that they have actually passed the pro-LGBTQ bill. But you see, they are colonial masters. And this law, that is Article 104 from our in our criminal code, which talks about the unnatural knowledge, it came from them.
Well, colonial masters are not people who entered invited. They came uninvited. So therefore, it is not everything they do that will be appropriate to us.
No. So all he's just trying to say is that the current law we agree with, we got it from them. So he's interested
it fitted our cultural beliefs.
So I get a sense that he's interested in going there.
Yes, I am very much interested because I want to find out how they did it. Because they were with us. They gave us this law, but now they have passed the pro-LGBT bill. In South Africa,
because their culture
it was apartheid.
Allowed.
As South Africa is African country, apartheid was at its peak. A black man could not go with a black woman, with a white woman, and vice versa. Now they passed this act. How did they get there? So we need to actually pass a bill that will withstand the test of time.
So what is the challenge?
So far as I remain the chairman of the committee,
what is the challenge?
I will not be succumbed by such pressures.
What is the challenges of the bill now?
Okay, let's take a break and we'll come back. It's still TV3's Key Points. I'm Jifa Bampo. Our guest, the Honorable Enyimedu, Chairman of Parliament's Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, and the Honorable Kofi Adams, MP for Buem. We'll be right back. Thank you very much for staying with us here on the Key Points. So we're in the last bit of it, and just some quick messages. This one from Kofi says, I think some of us will have to storm Parliament and force them to pass the bill. This one says, Jifa, I am not sure if the chairman is truly delaying the bill, but for whatever reason, this needs to be swiftly dealt with. And there's also a question there about maybe you might not be delaying anything. You've told us about the process, but there's also a view that maybe this is coming from the executive, seeing the significant backlash also that the country may have suffered because of this bill coming into the House.
Well, I think that where we are heading towards, we need to be very careful, because people are actually trying to create the perception that the chairman coming from the MPP side is actually delaying the bill. The moment we get to the fact that this is political, we would not see the bill passed into law. Because if it becomes political, everybody will protect the political interests. So there's nothing political about this. So they should not actually bring in the executive. The executive will come in when we have gone through all the stages. We have done the first reading, it's referred to us, we send our report, second reading, we do consideration, then we do third reading. Then we push it to the president to actually append a signature. That is when the executive would come in. The process we are using is like any other process. For instance, we have a private member's amendment bill that is proposed by myself and the ranking member of the committee on attempted suicide as an offense. We want to decriminalize it and make it a health one. We advertised, just like we have advertised this. We received memoranda from the public, doctors. We have eminent professors to be with us. And just last week, we held a meeting with them. And we are about writing our report to the House. The same process we have used. Nothing has changed. This one, it has generated a lot of public interest. And I'll remind you, Jifa, I'm sure that at the last meeting, even before the introduction of this bill, people believed that this was a bill that was going to be passed in a week. People believed that within 3 days, we were going to pass it. People thought that the speaker was going to ask who supports this bill, and then we raise our hands or rise, and then it will be passed. But no, it is not like that. And the members of the committee and every member of parliament knows the procedure.
So how, I know you wouldn't want to give a timeline, but what kind of, projections are we looking at then? Now that I guess it's clear to everyone that this is going to take some time.
It's very difficult to give a timeline. I can't.
Okay, and there is no pressure from the executive at all to delay processes?
No.
No pressure
from the executive.
Diplomatic avenues or external
with the diplomatic
forces?
avenues, we have, for instance, the meeting we attended in Hague. We had one of our own, a friend from Uganda. He's in the Ugandan parliament. They passed a similar bill, and the bill went to the president. The president didn't append his signature. It went back to them, and then later they found it. So he was advising against some of the things that are in the bill, and he analyzed our bill alongside our constitution by way of an advice. So people are saying that this would actually, it is not good for the nation, but like my colleague said, traditionally, where are we heading towards? Where have we come from? Is this something within our practice and whatnot? Sometimes also when you are passing a law, you look at it, is it something that you can implement? How are you going to actually catch two men doing their thing in a room or two women doing their thing in a room? How do you police these things? We actually have to study all these things and take them into consideration.
So you are still taking the various views,
yes,
perspectives.
Yes, yes.
And
but now we are finished with the public hearing.
Yes.
If anybody
so
says...
are you going to do any more public hearings?
No. Probably that's why...
So if the LGBTQ people... So you will make a concession for in-camera?
If they want to speak to their memorandum in camera, we'll listen to them. Okay, but if they don't, then we'll start the clause-by-clause analysis where we have to now look at the Constitution alongside our Constitution and whatnot. And when we are done, we submit the report to the plenary. Okay. And then, well, you were having the
yeah.
So, Honorable Adams, I hope this satisfies you and gives you a
give one example.
So briefly, because we have just 30 seconds to go.
What I want them to do is that to consider this meeting and take all the necessary clause by clause as quickly as possible. So we don't go on break without having them bring their report for the second reading of this bill and then it's possibly its consideration. So now that we are in, he's complaining about cost of, they shouldn't wait for us to go on recess before they have to be called upon to come and do stuff.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Unfortunately, that's all time will allow us here on the key points. Much appreciated to all of you for joining us and for sending your messages. I'm Jifa Bampo. Up next is the kids program, Kids Arena.